Grid. Guess what, man? Today we have Tim Lyons with Cityside Capital with us. Tim, thanks so much for joining the Grid Income Flip podcast. I appreciate you.
Rob, well, I appreciate you and thank you so much for taking the time and allowing me to come on to your podcast.
Of course, man. Of course. Well, one of the things that is important to us within our grid community is helping people understand how to take their active income and start converting that to passive income. And and when I was reading up on your bio, talking to you a little bit, that you've got a real passion for that. And so what I want to do is explore where that passion came from, explore how you even got started in the business. So take us back when, right?
Uh,
Um, Take us back to the beginning. What's the origin story?
well, it was a cold and cloudy day when I was. No, I'm only kidding. So I grew up in a town in called Mineola, which is on Long Island, just outside of New York City.
I couldn't have
And
tell. Couldn't tell by the accent, by the way.
I
Not at
know,
all.
I know. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. But listen, divorced household, still have both my parents, but money doesn't grow on trees, paycheck to paycheck. If we talked about money around the kitchen table, probably wasn't a good thing. And I really think that shaped my money mindset and my financial outlook. To kind of color within the lines, right? I tried to do my best. I was, a good student. Went to college, right? I was trying to do all the things. Ended up, becoming a New York City firefighter, a
Hmm.
lifelong kind of passion. I was always obsessed with fire trucks, and then 9/11 happened, and I knew a lot of people affected by that. And I was in college at the time, and I said, you know what, I'm going to be a New York City firefighter.
Wow.
But again, a safe job, pension, benefits, guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks. And that was me. That was what I felt like I was destined to do. And shortly after, becoming a firefighter, I realized that a lot of firefighters have second careers, right? Because we work 24 hours on and then we have like 2, 3, sometimes 4 days off, very flexible scheduling. So I worked at a bunch of nurses. And way back in college, I like to joke that I was pre-med for about 15 minutes until I joined the fraternity. And, you know, I guess you can really kind of play that out in your mind, how that worked out. But, I was an EMT in high school. So I had a real passion for medicine. And so I went to nursing school. I went to nursing school while I was a firefighter, while I had a brand new baby at home
Oh
and
my
newly
goodness.
married and a mortgage that could choke a horse. But I made it happen, right? And I was an ER nurse for about 9 years. And those two careers were awesome. Never the same thing every day. Excitement, so many happy, funny, laugh your, tail off days, and a
Hmm.
handful of soul sucking, sad days, right?
Hmm.
But it was a great way, right? I mean, the bills got paid, went on 2 vacations a year, put money into my retirement accounts. You know, what was not to love? Pension to look forward to. But inside, I'm taking you through a 10-year period. I had two more girls, right? So now I have three little
Hmm.
girls who are now 12, 9, and 4. I'm married, but I'm working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks. And I'm like, dude, this is not sustainable. My wife was feeling it. My kids were feeling it. I was home.
Hmm.
I was not home. It was crazy. And I felt like I was missing their lives. I had careers that I loved, but I felt not satiated with life. I
Hmm.
just didn't feel like I was there. And I went through a period of like personal growth and development. Like, what is it that I want in my life? And I want more time back, and I want more money, obviously. But how do I get more money without trading my time for money? And what I came to, Rob, was two things. I needed equity, and I needed cash flow.
Hmm.
And the two things led me down two roads: either buying or starting a business, or real estate.
Hmm.
And at the time, I figured that I didn't want to add a third job, right, in something that was uncharted territory. Just didn't seem appealing to me, right, with no guarantee of success, right. And not that real estate had a guarantee of success, but it has a track record of millennia behind it, saying, "Listen, I can duplicate or rip off and duplicate is what I love to say, right? Find someone who
Mhm.
did it before you, rip off and duplicate. So that's what I did. I gave real estate a try. November of 2019, I bought a 3 unit property. I owned it for 2 years, ended up doubling my money in 2 years. In that 2 years of owning the 3 unit property, I started Cityside Capital and we got into the commercial space. So I'm going to hit pause there and see if you want to unpack any of that.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is like I've read on your site like where the business is today, and I'm like, how the hell did you do that from 2019 to today? Like that is pretty fast growth. Um, but we won't get there just yet. I can completely relate, right? Where you look up one day and you're just saying to yourself, like, what's important? And like one of the most valuable assets that we all have is time. And many times we get into these jobs or these careers that actually take so much time from us. They rob from our families, they rob from our life. And um and around what age was that for you, by the way, when you were like when you looked up and you've got your three little girls and you were like, something's got to change? How old were you?
I was probably 36,
Yeah.
you know, um, ish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It starts happening in your mid 30s or at mid 40s where you're just like, okay, what's the purpose of all of this? Where do I want to take it? Right. Was there anybody that influenced you along the way? Was there any book that you read along the way that you were like, okay, this is, as you're kind of trying to decide buy a business, real estate, like what was it that kind of led you down the path of real estate specifically, or who?
It's a great question, and I don't know that there's any one answer to it, but I've always been, a big thinker or a dreamer inside, and and this was being a firefighter was a dream of mine. Like I wanted to honk the horn, I wanted to, be a hero. I wanted that, right? And I got exactly that. But after you do it for a little while, you're like, like am I built for something more, right? Am I really maximizing what I have inside? And I was a good student. I was top 20 in my high school, like went to a good college. Took me a while to get my, act together in college, but once I did, I was there. And, I've always been, interested in real estate, but growing up in the New York City, greater New York City area, like no one that I knew really did real estate because it was
Mm,
so expensive, right? There was no cash
mhm,
flow. The people who I
mhm,
knew who had properties or a second home or, they were probably feeding money into it every month. And after
mhm,
20, 25, 30 years, they looked like a genius,
mhm,
but it wasn't like a cash flow play and appreciation with a cherry on top. So and I guess I always joke around as a New Yorker, everybody's guilty till proven innocent in my world. That's my home base view, right? And so it's hard for me. It was hard for me to conceptualize, building a team, investing
mhm,
out of state, especially when I hadn't done it before. I didn't know anybody in my circle who had ever done that before. So like, when you've telling me that you have a group of 30,000 plus, in meetups and creating communities, like that's incredible because that's the secret sauce right there.
mhm,
So since I didn't do that, I was always reading books. I was reading the Wall Street Journal ever since college because in the mailroom at college they had free copies of the Wall Street Journal, and I would just take it every morning and at least read the front page, right? So I was interested in finance and personal finance. I just didn't have the capital, above and beyond what I was doing day to day, right? I didn't think I could play, right? I didn't think I could
mhm,
participate. But I also had a money mindset growing up the way that I did, paycheck to paycheck, that like that was my world, right? So when is there one book? Yeah, well, guess what? Summertime of 2019, I was sitting on a beach with my brother Greg and my other brother Brendan and all of our wives and kids and my dad, and we had done a Outer Banks, North Carolina trip
mhm,
for about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years at that point, every summer. And I had Rich Dad Poor Dad in
mhm,
my firehouse overnight bag that I bring to and from work. And for about a year, I had Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad in the bag. I just never took it out and opened it. But when I finally did on that vacation, I couldn't put it down. A day and a half later, I finished the book. I looked at my wife. I said, "Babe, I am going to be a real estate investor."
Dude, that book, I asked that question. That book is definitely, by the way, that book influenced me too. And that book's not even about real estate investing, right?
It's not.
It's
It,
about thinking.
yeah,
And
it's
but
a
that book is
framework.
it's a framework. That book has probably launched more real estate investor careers than any other book, which is kind of crazy, right?
And I sometimes, Rob, I hate even bringing it up because it sounds so cliche. Like I feel like I'm a part of a cult or something like that, and I'm not, right? But that opened up my eyes. I quickly went into the cash flow quadrant. Then I quickly went into Tax Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright, who's actually Robert Kiyosaki's CPA, right? And now I went into how to launch your own LLC from Garrett Sutton, another rich dad advisor. And before I know it, I'm like, I'm ready to go. I know 70%, 80% of what I maybe need to know to do my first transaction. 4 months later, November of 19, I'm closing on a three unit
Hmm.
that I self manage because again, I didn't trust anybody to do. No one cares for your kids the way that you care for them. I felt the same way about the property, right, and money.
Tim,
Um,
where did you buy that property?
I bought that in New Haven, Connecticut, in an area of New Haven called Westville.
Got it.
Westville, yep.
Okay. Yeah, because you were saying the numbers didn't make sense where you lived, so you had to go outside your market in order to do that.
Well,
Okay.
listen, like I went down the Bigger Pockets podcasts and forums. I went, 5 or 6 different podcasts, realizing, wow, there's so much I don't know. Even to this day, I learned something. I'm like, damn. I'm like, I thought I knew a couple of things. I don't know anything. Like I literally
Mhm.
know nothing, right?
Mhm.
Because there's so much out there. So, I heard about the 1% rule, right? And I'm like, man, I got to get, my gross potential rent has to be kind of equal to 1% of my purchase price. Like you can't do that in New York or the greater New York area. I'm just telling you
Mhm.
right now, like this doesn't
Mhm.
happen. So New Haven was an hour and a half from me, so it was doable, right? 90 minutes there, 90 minutes back. I had a partner who lived right in that area. So it was doable. But my gross potential rent was 3,600, and we bought it for 280, 276. So it far exceeded that 1% rule. And that's
Mhm.
why I felt so comfortable. Right. And ended up, we ended up, riding the COVID wave up, and I hated being a landlord. So we got rid of it. But, at least I have my proof of confidence and I had that first deal, which is so, so important.
Yeah, for sure. And so where did you take it from there?
So realizing that I was a husband, a father, a New York City firefighter, now a lieutenant, and an ER nurse, I had a lot of hats to wear. So landlording was not one of my favorite, or my wife or my kids' favorite, because again, it was 90 minutes there, 90 minutes back. It was a whole day basically to mow the lawn or shovel snow or you know whatever. So quickly decided that I needed to find something that was scalable. And commercial real estate, I kept on hearing about multifamily on podcasts, but I didn't think that I was smart enough. I didn't think I was worthy. It sounds
Mhm.
crazy to even verbalize that kind of stuff, but
Mhm.
I had
No, I
pictures of
love
my
that. It's an honest discussion. I think everybody, they go through that same thing, but they don't verbalize it. So that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, to me, spreadsheets, net operating income, loss to lease, gross potential rent, above the line, below the line, expenses, capex, deferred, all these things. I'm like, this is like a Wall Street private equity guy with a suit and a nice office. That's probably something that they do. But Tim,
Mhm.
the fireman, Tim, the ER nurse, who's just doing self education. I mean, I
Mhm.
don't know if that's me. And ended up getting myself a mentor very quickly, a paid mentorship that was
Mhm.
going to teach me about multifamily buying, due diligence, sourcing capital, the whole thing, right? Just, I mean, being inside of a community that was of people who were all rowing in the same direction, right?
Mhm.
Real estate is a rip off and duplicate kind of
Mhm.
process. So I did that basically March 1st of 2020. And as we all know, 2 weeks later, we were going to flatten the curve for like 2 weeks or something like that. You remember that?
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. I was like, we're screwed. I turned to my wife. I literally was like, we're so messed up. Like we're screwed, right? But
so
thank.
I just come out of pocket 25,000 to get educated, and I was like, I'm going to work while my girls are in school from 9 to 3. I'm going to do some work, and I'm going to make the phone calls, and I'm going to do my whatever. And now I'm doing like homeschooling on iPads with Zoom calls with my kids. Like it was a horror show. It was a
Yeah.
total horror show. On top of that, quick little story is I work in a very poor neighborhood in Queens called Corona, no pun intended, but it's called Corona,
Mhm.
Queens. And it's a very poor, very overpopulated neighborhood. And COVID went through like wildfire through that neighborhood. I mean, we were doing
Mhm.
CPR on people for about, I don't know, 2 to 3 months. The fires stopped magically, the car accidents stopped, the odors of gas, the cooking accidents, the outside rubbish fires, everything else stopped. And all we did for about 3 months was CPR, and nobody was making it. And not a lot of people do make it, right?
Oh my
But
god.
eventually we get people back. Nobody was making it. So with not a lot of information, I moved out of my house. I moved out of my house. I moved into my mother-in-law's house for 9 weeks, and I didn't hug my kids, kiss them, touch them,
Mhm.
have a meal with them for 9 weeks.
Oh my
And
god.
I put my head down, and I got up at 7 or 6 in the morning, and I went to bed at midnight, and I just studied, and I made phone calls, and I called brokers, and I called bankers, and I called investors, and I just told people what I'm doing. And I probably had some horrific phone calls, but I was getting my
Mhm.
reps in,
Mhm.
and personal growth and development. I mean, I really leaned into the process, and I
Mm.
credit that little period with skyrocketing Cityside Capital.
Mm.
So we got educated. I got mentored. I ended up doing a deal right during COVID that first summer, 43 units in Pennsylvania with my mentor. It gave me opportunity of a lifetime to join him on that deal. We still own it today. It's still throwing off cash flow every single month. And that was my first commercial deal. Very
Mm.
quickly, a month or two after that, we were partnering with people inside of our little group on 148 units in Greenville, South Carolina,
Mhm.
value add project that we've already gone full cycle on. And then right after that, beginning of 2021, we did 144 units on a Class A 2016 built property in Sarasota, Florida. That's absolutely killing it to this day. At that point, Greg and I realized that this is a sustainable model for us. We like commercial real estate. We believe in the thesis of multifamily.
Mhm.
Um, we're putting our own money to work, our
Mhm.
parents' money to work, our
Mhm.
friends, our family. We that's how committed to the process that we were, and we were joining other experienced folks. But what we realized was, it's a lot of work, number one. Number two, it's a team sport. And
Mhm.
the New York and me about guilty till proven innocent, I had to really flip that. It took me a while.
Mhm.
It took me a long time. But when you build teams and you're building relationships, you have to have that abundance mentality. And we decided that our strength was going to be in capital raising and sourcing capital. Being from the New York area, it's just something that we felt we could do and
Mhm.
do well. But as you know, Rob, you can't just raise capital and get compensated for it. You have to either have a material participation in that project,
Mhm.
or you have to get licensed. And that's what we did. We wanted to get licensed. We wanted to work with, best in class operators. So we got our Series 82 and our Series 63 licenses, and we work with a broker dealer platform that now raises capital for multifamily self storage and industrial triple net lease operators all across the country.
Are you still doing the firefighting and the EMT stuff, or have you decided that you can't do all things and be all things?
So sold the 3 unit, retired from the hospital.
Mhm.
Affectionately, I say retired, but I left.
Sure.
Yeah, I left February of 2020, right before COVID. And when I get together with my ER friends, they always thank me profusely for leaving them right before COVID hit. But yeah, because I couldn't do it all, right? I had to make
Yeah,
a decision, and so I decided real estate was my avenue. I let everything else go, and
and you went
people.
you went you went all in. Like, I wrote an article the other day, and it just talked about what does all in actually look like, right? There's so many people in our business that dabble in this, and I wanted to paint a picture of what all in looked like. And you gave me a picture of what all in looked like, right? From 7 in the morning to midnight, making phone calls, probably fumbling through the calls, learning, growing $25,000 of your hard-earned money into a training program that you don't know whether or not you're going to get a return on. You're like, I am going to, I could already say, I'm going to get a return on this $25,000, right?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
I knew
all.
I'd be good at sales if I can convince my wife to part ways at 25,000. So, I'm like, "If I can do that, I mean, I can do anything," right? So, but no, she's awesome. But, just to really answer your question, I still work as a lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department. I
Mhm.
have 21 months to go until I hit my 20-year, years of service, my 20 years of service, and I'd be eligible for my benefits and pension. So, that's the
Got to
game
keep
plan
that
right
going.
now.
Of course. Of
I'm,
course.
I'm a part of two different masterminds, and there's not one mastermind call that I hop on where they don't scold me for still working a W-2 job and not trying to scale the business even further. But
No,
I'm
no,
so
no.
close.
You're so close, man. That just makes
Yeah.
sense. You just finished that off. It completely makes sense, right? Um, in fact, that is a model. Like I've interviewed probably one of the wealthiest guys that I ever met, worked for the federal government for 30 years, and he accumulated hundreds of assets all around our area in Northern Virginia, in a place called Arlington, Virginia, which multifamily apartments, single family houses. I mean, and I still remember his name. By the time I met him, he was probably in his mid 70s, late 70s, and he'd been at it for 40 plus years, and he killed it, and he stayed in that job, and he was just like, I'm like, how did you build this? He's just like, one property at a time, one asset at a time. And what he was doing was he was now owner financing all those assets, right?
Mm.
To young people, hungry people like me. And I look back and I'm like, so dumb. I should have bought everything. I should have bought everything, right? But at the time, I kind of had that. This seems a little too good to be true, too, right? And I didn't know what I didn't know, Tim. I didn't know that
Right.
I had this whale in front of me that could have I could have, if I had just stuck next to him and bought everything. Oh my God, should have just done that, right?
Oh man, memories,
Memories.
memories,
I
right? Yeah.
know,
Oh
memories.
man.
Anyhow, so yes, you're so close. Makes total sense to do. And you guys are now in the business of, it sounds like, just raising capital, right? Raising capital, where you and your
Yeah.
brother, uh,
Hmm.
and putting that capital to work, right, in projects around the country with other operators. So my question is, how do you find those operators, right? How did you build your network there? How did you build your team? Because you've talked about that several times.
So yeah, a part of the process when I did my first three multifamily deals, the 43, the 148, and the 144. You learn a lot by working with different folks. You learn who you want to work with, who you don't want to work with, what types of personalities you drive with, what markets you want to be in.
Hmm.
Do you want to do value add? Do you want to do stabilized? Do you want to do, all sorts of things, right? I mean, we were literally drinking from the fire hose. And when we decided that we wanted to, and by the way, it's COVID, right? So don't forget there was like social unrest, there was riots in the streets, right? There was a whole,
Hmm.
the police, kind of shooting riots, whatever you want to call them. There was a cancel rent movement. There was economy was locked up, people couldn't go out of their houses, right? And I'm like trying to buy real estate. It was really a surreal time. And on top of that, I'm trying to raise equity from investors who are my friends and family, basically, college roommates and everything else. Trying to let them know this is like a good deal and this is what I'm doing. I mean, through that process, you come out with some bruises, but you come out stronger also, right? Because
Hmm.
you got the reps in. And so how do we choose operators, right? Like, so what I realized is that I want to work with best in class, issuers, operators, whatever you want to call them. In the finance side, we call them, issuers, because they're issuing a private placement
Hmm.
investment opportunity. As a limited partner, you call them operators or syndicators or something, along those lines. But I wanted to work with people that, had quote unquote gray hair, right? They've been through a market cycle or they've done a number of full cycle deals. I wanted to work with folks that did this full time. Like you said, there's a lot of people who go to a conference or two and they come out and they call themselves syndicators. And I don't know how those deals work out because I never invested in those deals, right?
Hmm.
Because That just wasn't what I was willing to part ways with my money to do, and I'm not willing to, help you out on your first deal, I guess. So what I was telling people to build my investor list was, this is what I'm doing, right? This is what I'm doing. I'm trying to diversify away from Wall Street. I'm trying to, the cash flow and equity thing. That's what I talked about on social media. That's what I talked about in my newsletters. That's what I talked about at RIA meetups. That's what I talked about on podcasts. And it resonated with people because I would get emails. Hey, I heard you on a podcast. And then they'd invest with me. And then before I knew it, I get another email. Hey, Bob, Bob Smith, told me that, he invests with you. He really likes you. And I just had a liquidity event and I have, $2 million put to work, let's talk. And I'm
Hmm.
like, holy cow. Right. So that's how I did the investor list. It was really kind of ground up.
Sure.
And working with a broker dealer is almost like a dream come true because, when you work on the finance side, even though we're doing, exempt securities, right? Like we're not doing IPOs or public securities. There's exemptions that we use, so we don't have to file those securities with the SEC, and it's usually under some sort of crowdfunding standard exemption like Reg
Hmm.
CF or most commonly we use Reg D, 506B, and 506C offerings. But there's a lot around that. There's a lot of legal stuff. There's a lot of compliance issues. And for me personally, like I like to dot the I's and cross the T's. I want to sleep well at night. I want to know that I'm doing the right thing. I want to know that the issuers are being held to a standard. And there's something called suitability, right? So we have to make sure that the issuer is suitable for our platform.
Hmm.
And we also, on our end, as registered reps of the broker dealer, we have to make sure that our investors are suitable. So are they
Hmm.
accredited? Are they not accredited? And we work with both, but we also work with not accredited folks, letting them know through education, how is it that you can qualify or, stuff like that.
Hmm.
So the broker dealer has a process for due diligence for operators. I don't go a week without getting at least 2 to 5 calls from operators across the country, across the world, really, that hear me on a podcast. They're like, "Hey, I think I have a great product for you. We have a deal under contract. When can we start working together?"
Hmm.
And that's not the way it works. It's usually about a 6 to 8 week process. There's a cost involved for background checks, due diligence, underwriting. We have in-house underwriters. The broker dealer will actually fly out and meet you and the team and walk the properties. We use a third-party due diligence firm called CrowdCheck to make sure that on your track record, that you actually bought and sold the properties that you said you bought and sold,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
you hold title, that you pay your taxes, all the things that as a limited partner, if you're a successful surgeon or entrepreneur, the questions you may not know to ask or the boxes you may not know to check. That's why we've been able to grow so quickly, is because we're kind of doing that homework up
Hmm.
front. So when we go out to our investors, they know the process, and it gives them some certainty, clarity, and confidence investing in real estate.
They know that you've done your due diligence, right, in that process.
Hmm.
How did you connect? How did you get connected with the broker dealer?
Uh, Good question. I was working with a coach at the time.
Hmm.
It was like a real estate, personal growth and development, business type coach. Because I needed that. Oh my god, I needed a lot of couch time in the beginning just to get started. And he put me in touch with somebody, and that person put me in touch with this broker dealer. And it's relationships. It's something that I heard about growing up. It's all about relationships and treating people
Sure.
right, and that's how business gets done. But then I saw it firsthand. Like, this is how it gets done, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I had to come out of pocket for this coach, right? And if anybody knows me, I'm pretty frugal with my spending habits. But like if I hadn't done that, then I wouldn't have had the opportunity, right? So that's how we ended up meeting with the broker dealer. We now have 21 or 22 groups that are all licensed and registered on this broker dealer platform. And
Hmm.
in the last 2.5 years or so, we've raised over $250 million. So
Wow. 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 That's unreal. And I know that this is a family business, right? So what role do you play? What role does Greg play? Tell me a little bit about that whole dynamic.
yeah, so many people have said, "Oh my God, you work with your brother? I mean, that must be really hard." And I'm like, "No, actually, it's awesome because he is my brother. I can call him and text him at all hours of the day and night." Um,
Yeah.
you know.
There's no
Um,
boundaries.
he's in Virginia, I'm in New York, right? So there are challenges, right? But thank God there's Zoom and Google Meet and all sorts of software and tools that help us to do this. Because he's a dad, he's a husband, he has a W-2 job in real estate down in Virginia.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's been a lot of trial and error. I mean, I take care of a lot of the podcast, forward facing social media, uh,
Lead
stuff,
generation, marketing stuff. Yep.
lead generation marketing. He does a lot of the more institutional raises with our 1031 attorneys and, network of qualified intermediaries and investor relations.
Hmm.
But we also, we kind of do some 50-50 too, as well.
Sure.
And, we just seem to make it work. And we're actually in the process of hiring our first hire. We're recording this at the end of August in 23. Yeah, we're about to hire a Wall Street veteran to come help us with our institutional capital side. And it's just exciting to kind of be where we are.
What's the biggest eye-opening thing for you? Because as I hear you speak, I hear just an ocean of difference between where you were in 20, probably 18 mentally to where you are today, right? And that's not a long time. That's like just short 5 years, right? What have you learned? What's possible?
Oh my God, that is such a loaded question, but I love it and I can't wait to answer it. What I've learned is that, you know, um, it's okay to color outside the lines.
Mm,
It's safe to color outside the lines, but you have to do it with education. You have to do it with mentorship. You have to do it with other folks, other like-minded folks. I mean, not to be too cliche, but I mean, like, Jim Rohn has a quote: "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with." Right. So take a look around at your circle. Who's doing the thing that you want to do? Who has that lifestyle? Who has that passive income? Who has the lifestyle by design? And if it's nobody in your circle, your social circle, well, then you need to level up if that's
mm,
what you want. And
mhm,
that's what I wanted, right? I love my social circle, right? We have a great time together. Our kids are friends. We do things together, but nobody was talking about that. So what did I have to do? I had to join masterminds. I have to go to conferences all over the country. That costs money, money that I didn't necessarily have 4 years ago, but I had a vision. I had a goal. I was defiantly committed to the outcome, to the process. This wasn't something I was going to dip my toe in the water. I needed this to happen. I wanted it to
mhm,
happen. And I wrote down my goals, right? I thought it was foo-foo. I tried to meditate a billion times. I still don't know if I'm doing it right. You know, um, do I write my goals down every day like I say I'm going to do it? No. But when I do it, it regrounds me and I become defiantly committed again to the outcome and the
mhm,
process. And what do I have to do? And I have my to-do list. And, so it's okay to color outside the lines. It's okay to, walk away from, a job or two, to burn the boats, as they say, and,
mhm,
and lean into the process. Because listen, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, right, entrepreneurs are compensated based upon the value they bring or the problem they solve, right? And if you can bring value and solve problems, you can make it. It might take you a while. You may need to burn the boats, but if you follow the process and you have mentorship and guidance and you're defiantly committed to reading and to podcasts and to joining folks that have been on the process before you, it's possible. And
Is that going to be the title of your next book, by the way?
it's possible.
Defiantly committed. I like that.
Yeah,
You
you know
know,
what?
I really like that.
Defiantly
So,
committed.
yeah, so many people are not defiantly committed, and so yeah, they go to a seminar, they go somewhere. I would call it all being all in, but defiantly committed like that. That really cements an idea in my head that I'm going to be defiantly committed to the life that I want to live. Uh, the people around me, I'm going to be defiantly committed to who I see myself becoming, right? And and I'm gonna play all in. right? And I'm going to encourage you at some point on your journey. You're probably going to go back and document this journey. And I think it's important for all of us as we go through this journey that we start documenting our learnings, right? Because uh, we all hear things differently from different types of people. Some people relate really well to you, right? Because they'll be like, "Oh, he's from New York, like me," and like he was in the medical space, and like which is what I love about community and what I love about mentors and what I love about training and development. It's like you can find your tribe, right? You could find your person. And what I heard you say is that you invested in skills, and you believe that if you got the right skills, that you would be able to um, make that return on that investment, right? And so many people don't want to invest in their skills because they're not
Um,
confident that they may not get the investment back.
100%. Because here's what I was gonna do. This is my game plan. I got on the fire department when I was uh, 3 weeks shy of my 23rd birthday. So I'm gonna be 43 basically when I can retire. And I was a nurse, right? So I was like, I'm gonna go back to nursing school. I'm gonna get my master's degree and I'm gonna be a nurse practitioner or a nurse anesthetist, and I'm gonna retire and I'm gonna go have another six-figure job waiting for me. That was gonna be another W-2 job, right? That was gonna be
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 years of school, nights and weekends, studying. I don't know, 50, 60, 70, 80, $100,000 in tuition and fees and lost wages because I can't work the overtime. I can't work in the hospital because I have to go to school, right? There was an opportunity cost there to do something that was going to be safe and inside the lines and vanilla and right down the fairway and whatever other cliche term you want to say. And that was going to be my exit plan, right? Because then I could
Mm-hmm.
do both, right? I have the pension and the benefits, and then I'd have this safe job, right? Everyone's going to need a nurse practitioner to take care of their
Mm-hmm.
cough, right? And I I said to myself, why not take that tuition money and go learn a skill? Learn how to use Excel, learn how to underwrite. What does it mean to underwrite? What does it mean to understand accounting and income and expenses and debt and equity and market dynamics and sales and marketing and all these different things, right? I mean, and now this is what I'm doing every day. I have my own podcast, right? I wrote a chapter in an Amazon, #1 best-selling book along other rock stars. I've been able to put a pool in my backyard, right? Something I never
Mm-hmm.
thought I'd be able to have,
Mm-hmm.
and swim in it, and know that my hard work was the reason why I'm swimming in this pool with my girls. So you know, those are the choices, right? And when there's no guarantee of a win at the end, it could be overwhelming. And that's why on my journey, I've been able to lean on people, make phone calls. People have taken my phone calls. They've spent time with me, and that's what I love to do now, right? Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
podcasting with Rob on a Thursday afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
or taking calls from other people that are just starting their journey, or hopping on a coffee date, or whatever. Because what I found in this spot, and maybe Rob, you can back me up with your experience, but people are willing to help out, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't like an ask hole, right? But if you're truly willing to spend time and you want to do something, I find that people have helped me, and I'm willing to help other people. And I think that's pretty special for a business space, because I don't think every business space is kind of like that. But yeah, I can go on and on. I'm gonna throw it back to you.
No, no, no. I agree. I mean, I love that. Nobody likes an ask hole. I love
Hmm.
that. I've never heard that. I'm gonna have to use that. But people, if you come from contribution and you help other people in that process and acknowledge the help that you're getting in that process, and then give it, pay it back, give it forward, right? Like you said, this what I love about investing is that it's so symbiotic. We all need each other in this world, and and in fact, we created the grid investor community specifically around that whole philosophy. It's like it's the go giver philosophy. It's like let me help you on your journey because through the course of that, this law of reciprocity kicks in, and you just never know how that law of reciprocity is going to kind of shake out over time. It's been really good to us over the last decade, right? As we built our different businesses. Um, what I love about what you said was that you invested in these skills in a language that you didn't know anything about, right? Like you really didn't know about like Excel, and you didn't know about like market dynamics, and you didn't know about like cost segregation, I'm sure, like any of the stuff, or like you had to. But what's interesting is that you knew that you could learn. And I think that probably being a firefighter and being an RN nurse taught you that you had the ability to learn anything as long as you put your focus to it, right? And I think that that's a really important message that people need to hear, is if you commit to learning something and then going all in on the learning, that you could be a firefighter one day, that you could be a nurse one day, that you could be a syndicator, that you could, right, that you could, whatever it is you want, all of it is out there for you to absorb and learn. And uh, the art of learning is an important skill, right?
It sure is.
And the interesting, I just want to, like, I'm drawing some correlations. Being a fighter, that's some shit, man. Just got to tell you, right? Like that is going into the unknown, right? Like you are risking, like that is like being an entrepreneur, right? Like being an entrepreneur, you're like, I could do that. Like I go into burning buildings, I save babies, right? We're like like I could do anything. I'm sure that you, like everything that you have done up until this point, and I want people to hear this because this is important, prepared you for the new journey you were going on, right? Sometimes people, you know, get into real estate investing right off the bat and they don't feel like it's coming fast enough. Maybe they hadn't built these foundational skills, like getting to understand how to develop rapport with people, and getting to understand how to learn something, and getting to understand how to commit to something over an extended period of time, right? Like you didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a firefighter, or, I'm going to be a nurse, or that I'm going to be a syndicator, right? Like it's like raising capital, getting your series. What is it? 80. What was it? What series did you get? 83?
82 and
82,
63. Yep.
82 and 63. Like that's hard, right? So what advice would you give somebody on this journey, right? It really, to me, your journey is like really condensed. Like I talked to people that have been in the industry like 20, 30 years, right? And I am really surprised that there's a whole slew of you out there, Tim. Damn you guys that have built like unbelievable businesses in like 5 years, 6 years. What advice would you give somebody listening right now on like, and I know you've given clues the whole time, but like if you could do it even faster, what advice would you give?
Oh boy, the advice to do it. Like, so what I would say is, number one, you need to be you need to spend some time in thought, right? Like I feel like these days we're trying to always scroll to the bottom of our phone, right?
Mm,
We're never gonna get there, but we just constantly do it. I would say put the phone down, get clear on your thoughts. What is it? What kind of life do you want to lead? Do you want to be a W 2 worker? Nothing wrong with that. You know, do you want to be a 1099, an entrepreneur? Do you want to have passive income? Right. But once you're clear about what it is that you want, then you got to get, we always say education times action will lead to your results. Right. And when you educate yourself, whether it's masterminds, podcasts, books, audiobooks, meetups, mentorship, unpaid mentorship, paid mentorship, whatever it is, you learn that nothing is insurmountable. People have done this for the longest time, and you
mhm,
can do it too, right? But you can't get stuck in analysis paralysis, right? If you had to get a PhD every time you needed to make a decision, you wouldn't do anything any day, right? You would just be paralyzed. Understand that, you have to lean forward a little bit. You can't just sit back on your heels. You lean forward, education, action, get around the right people. You know, I'm huge on my podcast. Everyone knows you got to read 10 pages a day.
mhm,
That's that's 300 pages a month. That's 3,600 pages a year. That's probably 10 to 20 books, depending on the length. Where would you be in 2 years if you read another 20 to 40 books?
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
you know, um, I know there's not one idea right there, but it's that idea that there's a mindset shift that has to occur.
Mm.
You know,
There is one idea. It's the idea of being the consummate learner, right? It's like, am I a little bit better today than I was yesterday, right?
yes,
Um, Now, you said something really wise. You started off with get very clear on what you want, because the world of real estate investing is really big, right? I interview people that are in storage and people that are in, multifamily, and people that are flipping single family houses and doing sub twos and wholesaling and like all of it. And many times, in the beginning, you have to taste things to figure out what it is that you actually like, right? You learned that you didn't like landlording yourself, like being a hands-on landlord. And so you had to taste that to figure out, okay, that's not for me. And then you had to sit and think, what do I want? What do I enjoy? What gives me energy? Where do I see myself growing? And I don't think enough people take time to actually sit down and think about that. They're stuck in the doing. Oh, let me just chase the next deal because I see somebody do that. So let me chase. So I think, to me, that is just incredible advice. Get quiet. Get
yeah,
quiet.
uh, get quiet, and then to stack on top of what you just said, don't get shiny object syndrome. Um, and what I find a lot is people when I talk to, when I wake up in the morning, I have calls on my calendar, right? And people sign up for calls on the calendar link or through the website, whatever it might be. And it's those initial calls that I actually love to have because there's people out there with a lot of money, right? Just call it like it is. There's a lot of money out there, and they come from all different walks of life. And a lot of them will say, Tim, how do you know this? Right? You're Tim the fireman, Tim the ER nurse, I'm whatever, insert, prestigious, career and, experience, in that sentence. And the thing is, this is a journey and it's not an event. And too many people are looking for the event, right? There's a book by MJ DeMarco, I think it's called The Millionaire Fast Lane. And he
Hmm.
talks about the
Hmm.
event is not how to be the millionaire, right? The Bitcoin billionaire YouTube videos with the clickbaity titles and the Rolls Royce in the picture, like that's not life. Life is the journey. It's becoming committed. That's what it is, right? And that's where that success is. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there because shiny object syndrome and the event type mentality will really be the things that hold you back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tim, I appreciate you joining us today on the Income Flip podcast. Um, you know, I always love to journey down the thinking of the entrepreneur, because I believe it's the thinking that and the stories around that thinking that gives us the most nuggets versus the tactics, right? Like the tactic, you can go on YouTube and like look at tactics and all the rest, right? But it's the thinking. We always say that success leaves clues. You left a lot of clues today for our listeners, and I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you, Tim.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, man. I could talk about this stuff all day. I'm passionate about it. And if I could just leave your listeners with one thing, I mean, Tim the fireman, Tim the ER nurse, and Tim the entrepreneur. I mean, it's two different worlds, right? And it's possible. So, um, yeah,
If people wanted to reach out to you, where do they go? How do they find you?
yeah. You can check us out on our podcast called the Passive Income Brothers Podcast. Me and my awesome older brother Greg. That's a weekly show. Comes out on Wednesdays. But then if you want to schedule a call or check out our website, it's citysidecap.com, and I'm on all the major social media channels. Yeah.
Awesome, man. I'm going to check out the podcast. Thanks,
Thank you,
Tim.
sir. All right.
Take care.